Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we're here for another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I have a special guest, Mr. Jason Mikesell, Teller County, Colorado Sheriff, who is running for governor for the state of Colorado.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm happy to be with you.
You bet. So you're out of Teller County, which is just outside of Colorado Springs, outside of El Paso County.
I am, yeah.
How long have you been the sheriff up there?
So I've been in law enforcement 28 years. I retired after 20 years. I started my own companies, and then I came back into law enforcement since 2016. So another 8 years as the sheriff.
Okay. And you decided to run and throw your hat into the ring on governor.
I did, yeah.
Why?
Well, there's a lot of people ask me that question. And I think a lot of it came down to I go up and I fight legislation a lot throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I ran into is I'll have a discussion with a senator or a House member about a bill or information. And I kept getting things back like, well, we can't do those things because it's too much political capital used. And what I would find is we would get going through the process, there just wasn't the support there. And a lot of issues that I had was they were taking criminal justice issues and making them much softer on crime. And instead of telling the community, the people throughout Colorado what's really happening, they would hold back and then they would pass a bill that really was not advantageous to Colorado. And it was hurting victims' rights, and it was really hurting law enforcement officers. And over the last few years, we've seen so many bills that impacted law enforcement. And it's just gotten worse and harder to find guys that want to do it. And I think that was one of the reasons. The other side of it is I have businesses. When I retired, I started a company. I scaled that company to a large company. And my wife and I have multiple small businesses. And then I started to see the legislation affect them as well. It makes it really hard to run restaurants in Colorado. It makes it hard to run a small business in Colorado, and you're seeing them close up almost every single day. And then what I saw was that I would go up to the legislation, and I would be one of the people talking about a major bill like the firearms bills. And even though you were the one in the room that had the most knowledge with many others, it didn't matter what we said. It was already done. They had already decided where they were going to go with the bill. So at that point, you no longer have a voice in Colorado as a citizen. And I think that's important for people to understand where we sit right now in Colorado of not having a voice. I have 3 boys, and those 3 boys, one's in law enforcement, one's in the 173rd Airborne Unit, and one's in security technology stuff. And I used to tell them, hey, don't complain about something. If you're going to complain about it, go fix it. Well, the problem is I wake up in the morning, I'm complaining about all these different issues. And I finally just went, you know what? It's time just to do something instead of just sitting at home and complaining about this. I have a voice. I have the ability to go do these things. So why not just go do it? So that's why we're running.
When you decided to run for sheriff, this was not your ultimate goal to become governor of the state of Colorado.
Oh, no. I didn't even want to be a sheriff at the time. I was actually appointed to be a sheriff, brought back because of the major cartel issues that were occurring in my county. I had retired and started a very good company. We were doing very well. I came back because my kids were in school. And at the time, the state of Colorado didn't want to identify that there was a black market marijuana problem. Not a marijuana problem, but a black market marijuana problem. And at that point, Colorado didn't want to say that we had the issue with black market marijuana, and it was killing, the industry of their businesses. But the other piece, too, was that there was so much marijuana everywhere, and the cartels were so heavily into the communities because we had created in Colorado this Wild Wild West for cartels, because there was no law that could stop them. So I had a phone call from the commissioners at the time, and they asked me if I'd come back because I had ran a SWAT team in the information and intelligence division for quite some time. And so I came back, and I had been in the training realm with my company for many years for a lot of different types of training events. So when I came back, I thought it was going to be a short-term thing. It was about 2 years. So we came back. Within 6 months, we had changed kind of the direction on working with the DA's office or district attorney's office to combat the illegal marijuana side of things. And with that, we got with the media. We were able to run operations. And within about 6 months, we had totally pushed out cartel marijuanas in our county, to the fact that we had them running to the dumps, throwing marijuana plants out and saying they know that we were going to come for them. So I had put out a dictate just before law change, which was going to allow us to go after illegal marijuana. It was going to, I think it was like January 1st is when it was going to start at midnight. So the day before, I'd put out a dictate to the whole county: if you're here doing illegal marijuana, I'm going to be at your door at 8 o'clock the next morning. And we started kicking in doors with search warrants at 8 o'clock that next morning. And that word traveled so quick through the community that they were leaving, and they were pushing into other counties because they didn't want to be in this county. And we were tracking them down with going after bank accounts and things in other states to make such an impact so quickly that it destroyed that ability for them to function within our area.
Right.
So after that, I couldn't not get elected was the problem. So at that point we ran, and then I really didn't have to even have an opponent through those 2 years. And I enjoyed it. It was good to bring back the will for law enforcement to want to do it and taking politics out of an office. I didn't care what the politics were. It was, we have a job to do. Let's get it done. And then today, we had 200% turnover when I came back. I think today we have a waiting list to get on. So it has changed. The office has grown to where it's at now. It's 120 personnel and doing extremely, extremely well. With or without me, it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So, but that's because you develop mentoring, you develop organizational capabilities, and you listen to the people that live in your community, and they tell you which direction they want to go with things, and then you push forward on that. So.
And you've got a military background.
I do not.
No.
So straight law enforcement. I did work in the instructor training realm for many years with a military organization, mm-hmm. And I did a lot of training and teaching. So, but it was kind of a second job for the most part.
How long you lived in Teller County?
So I've lived in Teller County my whole life.
Really?
So I'm a third generation Coloradoan. My daughter's fifth generation, or my granddaughter's fifth generation now. So it's something that I just love. I've never found a reason to want to leave Colorado. So.
In Teller County, I lived there a long time ago as a kid, as I told you, and when I used to rodeo, and we lived up north of town. They still had the Jack Maris Arena there in town, which is not even there anymore. They just got I don't know what did they do with that? It's just like
it's now a park, and I think it's about to become a steakhouse.
Oh, it is? Yeah. Okay. So it's changed a little bit.
Changed a little bit.
Yeah. But Teller County used to be the Old West.
Yeah.
But even 40 years ago, it was much different than what it is today. Colorado Springs was much different, but Teller County didn't have a hell of a lot of residents at that point in time.
No.
And now it's grown exponentially since then. Do you see the change of the societal demographics in Teller County, like what Colorado Springs has or what Denver or Boulder has?
I think we're staying very similar to Colorado Springs and El Paso County. Mm-hmm. Teller County's always been always was a rural community. It used to be a ranching community. It was a big hunting area throughout the state. I think a lot of that's changed, absolutely. And it's now changed. People want to recreate, but they're not into hunting. They're not, not as much as what they were. So we also went from when I started, I think with the sheriff's office, there may have been 7,500 people in the county. Now I think you're closer to 35,000 to 40,000 with about 100,000 people there a day because of gambling. So
because you've got gambling in Cripple Creek.
Yeah. Yeah.
And has that been a benefit or a detriment, in your opinion, in the long run?
I think there's two sides to it. One, it brought jobs into the community that really needed jobs. It did change kind of the values of things because it was no longer a ranching community. Mm-hmm. So there's some good, some bads, just like anything else. Mm-hmm. And the thing is you're never going to stop that change. Colorado's facing it now. But it did change some things for the better, for the fact that people could actually get jobs and be able to live in the area and continue on.
How's the commission there in Teller County to work with, your county commissioners?
I got great county commissioners. I got one who's a veteran, and he was an Apache pilot, and he's just a great person to be around. That's Dan Williams.
Dan Williams.
Yep, Dan. Eric Stone, he's a business guy, smart, moved here from Wyoming. And I've got a Bob Campbell, who's been around as a commissioner forever. So he's got a good idea of the numbers and the knowledge of what it was in Teller County and what it's now going to be. So I have good commissioners.
You're a sportsman yourself.
I am, yes.
What do you like to pursue?
Well, I'll be quite honest. I'm more into small game nowadays than I am bigger game. I got really into bird hunting. I have a little dog she loves to hunt, and that's what we do a lot of the year. But I grew up hunting elk and mule deer. Mule deer is actually one of my favorite animals to hunt. I think they're just beautiful. And so I've had a hunting license now since I was probably 14. I've had it forever. So I get a hunting license every year. Now, some years I get to go out more than others, and a lot of time it's maybe just to go out and look at the scenery because I don't see anything anyways. But I will tell you, I've hunted all over the place, and I just enjoy it.
The Teller County itself has got a vast amount of resources, landscape. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is trying to enter into some sort of an agreement with the state in reference to the recreation side up on Pikes Peak.
Ring the Peak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something that is a combination of multiple counties, multiple jurisdictions and municipalities, or?
It's two major counties. It's El Paso and Teller counties. The Ring the Peak would stretch from, I think, the Green Mountain Falls area all the way around Pikes Peak to over towards the Broadmoor. Some goods to it. People will be able to see the area. Some bads to it. The problem I have is being a sheriff and understanding how we deal with wildfires. That area is choked with areas that have never been mitigated. It crosses mine properties and private properties, so there's the issue of trespassing on the different pieces. But the other piece is we can't get to it. There's not like roads that get to these areas. It's high mountain. You're 10,000 plus feet at any given time. So the worry I have for a lot of that is as we start to have this rural-urban divide, people believe, well, all this area is meant for us to travel and walk in and do those things. But the problem is that a lot of our animals now, that's moose breeding area now too. The elk run through that area. And I have a big problem with people that leave their dogs off the leash anyways and chase wildlife. That's happening a lot. We have the issues of people starting fires, and it's extremely hard for us to get into. My search and rescue team is out, weekly now on missions. The problem is people come up from Colorado Springs and they believe, or they come from out of state and they think they can dress in shorts, walk around Pikes Peak. It's this beautiful, and it is, but it's also a high mountain and it's dangerous. Not only for the fact of running into a moose with a baby or running into a bear in the backcountry or a mountain lion, but the fact that storms come in so quickly up there and it changes that environment drastically. So there's goods and bads to it, and I think they've got a lot to work that out.
Have you had any major fires in Teller County?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So,
yeah.
So I think as a sheriff,
a softball.
Yeah, that's a softball. I think as a sheriff, I've had more major fires than pretty much anyone else. That were type 1 type fires, which were bringing in big federal resources to deal with. So everything from Hayman to Waldo Canyon, because we had the other side of Waldo Canyon if it moved. And then we had Springer fires. We had, I don't know how many, over the last few years, I averaged probably 5,000 people out of their houses every year that are being evacuated. So my county, in the last, I think it was last year, into that cycle, we had 3 major events within mere weeks of each other. So you're going from one operation cycle to the next operation cycle, and it's a lot. And then with the pared down resources Colorado has, because they don't have all the resources they need, and plus with the federal government pared down of what they have, it really falls back on understanding how the local wildland teams work and how your local operations work and how to get firemen into those areas, and really relationships with other sheriffs sending folks. So fires are a lot, and we've had some of the bigger ones in the state and some of the most dangerous ones with the most high value at risk. And really, that Pikes Peak area you're talking about, Ring the Peak, that's one of my big fire concerns, because that is all of the water for Colorado Springs. That's all the water that runs to Denver. That's all the water that's the headwaters for.
Because what is there, like 7 lakes on the peak?
Yep.
That are the water storage lakes?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all the major water storage lakes. So if those silt up or they get filled up with something, it would have a devastating effect on Colorado. Not just to the cities, but also that water is what they use to mine by Victor. So all the gold that comes out of the Victor area uses that mine to help leach gold out. Mm-hmm. So not only that on the fiscal side of just dealing with large fires, but now you have a fiscal side that deals with Cripple Creek and the gaming industry, and then you also have the mining industries, and then you have the lumber industries. So it's got a lot of unique issues up there.
The agriculture side has decreased significantly. Just some of that's urban development that just continually sprawls. But there's still cattle operations.
Yeah.
In Teller County.
There's a few. PBJ Ranch is one of them. The Larsons that own property on their side of my county. So there's still operations going. They're not as big as they used to be. Mm-hmm. But I think right now, and this is the worry for all ranchers and farmers throughout Colorado, it's the water augmentation rights and how they keep those. Because I've dealt with the Denver Water Board over multiple different issues, and they just, it's going to be harder and harder for a rancher or a farmer to deal with the water issues. We had some issues last year where they're trying to, or multiple years now, where they're trying to drain all the farm ponds. Because they believe that, that water is dissipating in the atmosphere and we're not being able to make money on it or keep it for mm-hmm. us sending down the river. Well, there's a problem with that. That's where all the animals drink too. That's where farmers and ranchers use those lakes to water their right. animals. So what they want to do is drain a lot of these ponds if they're not a certain depth or a certain. So then I had a big issue with it because it's strategic for a sheriff and fire departments to understand where they can get their water from. So when we looked at how do we protect those, the state came out with an issue that said, or Department of Natural Resources, hey, we're going to protect those ponds, but they got to meet these criteria. Well, what those criteria were, they had to have a pumping system there. They had to have a road built to it that met a standard on roads. None of those ranchers could build any of that infrastructure. There's no way you could even do it. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, everybody's jumping on board trying to protect these ponds. But with what the state gave them, they don't meet any of the requirements. So, we've got ponds that have been back in there. We used to have an area on Gold Camp called Cathedral Lake. Yep. It was beautiful. The state came in and made them drain that. And that was a big resource up there for fishermen and wildlife and just so much more. And when that drained, boy, I tell you, I was just shocked. It was such a beautiful area. Been there since the 40s.
What's the status of Rosemont Reservoir?
I don't know where Rosemont's at right now. Yeah. I know that there's some struggles over it.
Is that El Paso County?
No, that's actually in Teller. Yeah. But I think all water should be of concern to all Coloradoans right now because we're having a wet year in our area mm-hmm. this year, which is nice. But when you don't, those are the only water assets you have. And if the state keeps having you divert those, then the other thing is when we do get these major rains and major storms, those lakes, those areas were put in by the Corps of Engineers early, and they were used as water breaks. So mm-hmm. the water didn't come down and just flood everything below us. Mm-hmm. But they've been having those things torn out. So now I look at it and go, well, we had learned something almost 80 years ago about how water flows. Now we're tearing these things out because we think we have to have this water because we're in a drought period. Well, what happens when the water comes back and now we need to dam these areas up again?
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense to me why
Or if it came through in 4 inches like they had at Hugo last night. Yeah, and you don't have any diversions.
Yep, that's a problem. So ripping this stuff up because we don't look at our history doesn't make sense to me.
The road construction that could happen in Teller County to widen Highway 24 is non-existent.
Yeah, so it's all state money, right? And here's what I'm finding around the state. And I travel everywhere because this campaign, I need to go and meet people everywhere.
Yeah, you're going everywhere.
I'm just everywhere. And I tell people all the time, I'll come in over Raton Pass because I have family out of state, so we go and visit and we're coming back through. And I'm paying $1 less a gallon before I come up the pass. I hit the top of that pass, and as I'm coming down the other side, there are so many potholes and crap in the road. It's and you see the sign that says, "Welcome to beautiful Colorado." Mm-hmm. And about that time, you hit a pothole and you about go off the road. Then as you're coming down through, I hit the next gas station, and I'm paying another $1 more a gallon. And that money is supposed to be spent on roads, infrastructure. But you drive up I-25 or I-70 into Denver. Now, that road's fairly decent. But if you look at me, why there's another lane here that I got to pay more money on for fees to even get on, when Colorado taxpayers are already paying for it. And then in my county, you have roads where I've had multiple fatality accidents over the years, and nobody's looking at putting in deceleration lanes. Nobody's looking at fixing these roads, and nobody's looking at the widening of it. And then we hear, well, it's going to cost us $640 million to do. Well, how much did we just spend on these fee roads? And where's that money going?
Or how much does somebody want to spend on a bridge at the Capitol?
Yeah, or a bridge at the Capitol, which just shocks me. So, all of those issues that we're dealing with in Colorado for money for outside of the Denver metro area is becoming a big issue for all counties. Now, when I say Denver metro area, it's really the metro right downtown, that certain area. Because even cities on the outskirts, how much money do you really get from the state to fix your roads?
Right.
I know we don't get much of anything, and when they do come in, it's usually going to make things worse. So it's an issue.
Is there anywhere in Teller County, I don't think there is, that has a wildlife crossing anywhere?
No.
Or underpass?
Nope, we have none. And that's for an area that has a huge elk population. We're 70% U.S. Forest Service. It would be nice to have them. But really, you only have 1-2 roads, I guess, that go through that are major state highway infrastructure.
Yeah.
Highway 24, which the elk cross constantly, and then Highway 67. And we have deer hit almost daily. So those are issues with our population base. We just have so much traffic now, and the state's just not keeping up with what needs to be done with those highways.
Yeah, if you got, I don't know, 35,000 residents up there or whatever it might be, how many visitors do you have? I mean, with you got Cripple Creek on the gambling side, then just the regular recreationists, and the people traveling through to go farther to recreate.
Yep.
There's a tremendous amount. I mean, it might be a shoulder neighborhood, but at the same time, you're in the midst of it.
Oh, you're feeding right out onto a highway from a subdivision. People are doing 60 miles an hour. Same thing, though. I was up in Crested Butte the day before yesterday. They got the same issues. We were in Grand Junction in Montrose the week before.
Yep, saw you over there.
Same issues. It doesn't matter where I go. We were headed to a function in a chicken coop at a place here by Denver. And I missed a pothole that was the size of a couch on E470. We were talking, and Renee, my scheduler, we're just trucking along because we're trying to get to this event. And I'm not kidding you. I think if we'd have hit that thing, we'd have lost the whole front end. I was shocked how big it was. But
I came back toward Canyon City when I saw you over there in Grand Junction. I was over there for the commission meeting, and just even going down Highway 50. From Junction to Delta to Montrose, the road's pretty good. There's a couple spots that didn't.
Yeah, it'll get you.
Yeah, you want to hang onto your butt when you turn around and go around a corner. I know that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So your travels around the state have not really started hard like they become 6 months from now. But you started pretty extensively. I mean, you're traveling all over.
Yeah, we're traveling a lot. I bet you 3 to 4 days a week we're on the road somewhere, and it's usually at events people are requesting we come and talk. And it's been good though. I mean, we've really enjoyed it. I've seen more of Colorado right now doing this than I have in the last 10 years. And I grew up as a rural kid, so I was all over Colorado to begin with, but hunting and fishing and just doing stuff. And now it is interesting seeing the different areas and how they've grown and what people. But the thing I find interesting when I'm talking to all these folks around Colorado is they all have the same complaints, and they feel like Colorado's in the middle of an issue like every single day. It's not just one thing. It's everything from folks that are trying to do health for people and how they're being taken advantage by the state and they won't be listened to, or our Second Amendment folks, or sporting folks, or the wolf issues, or highway issues, or how companies are having to deal with regulations coming from the state, or just down to the guy down the street trying to get his license plates and what that's costing him now for fees, or dumping your trash in the fees. It just doesn't seem to be going away, and a lot of it is all financially based.
Do you see, like, for instance, you said you were in Grand Junction. Are the bitches and complaints over there similar or different than they are in let's say, Salida?
I'll tell you, they're the same, except for the wolf deprivation, because it's not being seen widespread yet in the state. It will be, but there it's very real. It's right in front of them, and dealing with the state level politics with that. Everywhere in the state, you're dealing with the same issues, and it doesn't matter to me where you're at. It's the fees, it's the regulations. It's forcing regulations out of Denver on local counties and county control locally. It's the license plate fees. It's everything that we as Colorado used to have as, kind of our home cities would decide different things is now being funneled through Denver in an area that a lot of those things shouldn't apply to where we're at. It's the that urban interface, or what we call also the WUI, and how that's having an effect now on fire departments. Our insurance is being taken away from us because really the state needs to do more to work with insurance companies to get them back here. I have so many residents, and I talk to residents in Chaffee County. I talk to residents in multiple counties where they're losing their home insurances. And I don't see us doing a lot in the state to get it back or to deal with those issues and why. Sitting down with them and asking them why. Well, there's a lot of reasons why. Colorado's had a lot of issues. But a lot of it feeds back to the same issues over and over again. It's a crime issue. It's a financial issue. It's all these different things. And really, it's a leadership issue at multiple levels within the state, and really an incompetency.
Do you think that the Front Range people that you spoke with are as divided from the middle part of the western slope as what it appears on the urban-rural divide, or is it just that they're just? It's not so much they're divided; it's just that they don't know about it.
I think it's education. And here's the thing I found about the state: you kind of have like 3 areas in the state where some things just don't get out. So I think they have the same issues from everywhere I've gone, but what I see is educating the Front Range about what's happening on the western slope about, say, wolf deprivation or the sportsman's issues, or even when we were looking at taking public property and taking it away from the public and selling it off. Those issues in the Front Range may not have been of interest to a lot of people, but if they would have understood how it would have affected them later on, it would have been a big issue. And I think from what I'm watching, the rural-urban divide is really Denver legislation bodies. That's where it's now coming from. Because those legislations, what they're seeing within the city of Denver, the city of Arvada, the city of all those different areas up there, that's what's creating more of the divide through local governments and then big government, state government. I think that's where a lot of that divide is coming from. Not so much the people, because they just don't know the issues, but really from what the state government's doing.
But do you think, Jason, that people are paying close enough attention to the stuff that's important, or are they just griping about it and not trying to really do anything with it?
Well, there's a lot of griping going on. I think now people are really seeing the issues, though, because they're coming so close to home. I think that's now changing. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, unaffiliated. It doesn't matter because it's now affecting everybody on their daily lives. So there's a lot of griping. There's definitely a lot of that because people are just fed up with it. They're tired of dealing with it. And I think they're just tired of dealing with how a state government works. And honestly, now they're starting to understand what we deal with in the legislature every day. Because look, how many people understood that your Second Amendment rights were about to be taken from you with those bills?
Well, maybe not even about. Maybe they are.
Well, they are. They have been.
Yeah. I mean, you start to look at the people that are concerned about those things. If you look at, what was it, Senate Bill 003, if you look at, you talked about the immigration bill. Pop up that 003, Tyler, please. If that takes effect, which it will.
In August.
August of next year, that's going to be detrimental to the point to where how does a law enforcement side, this is a two-part question, how does the law enforcement side comply with that without being so restrictive or prohibitive, and how does state government turn around and enact that? And if you were to become the next governor of the state of Colorado, you were in law enforcement and you would be governor. With that background. I mean, the current governor doesn't have the law enforcement background. Current governor doesn't see, like maybe I and other individuals would see. How do you deal with that?
You want the long version or the short version?
Well, we got a couple hours, so whatever you want.
All right. Well, Here we go then, because here's the issue. I'm the only candidate that understands the law side of it at all because I've been dealing with it. 003 as a bill, I and multiple other sheriffs and most all sheriffs in the state of Colorado got on board with fighting it. There was a lot of underhanded politics that went into that bill, even towards us as sheriffs. And I kind of identify some of it out real quick. So we were not going to be in support of this bill. 003 was a detriment to any citizen's rights, their constitutional rights. There's nothing good about this bill. So we go up to testify. And we would testify the first round and then be told, well, it passed. It's going to go to the next round of testimonies in front of now the different legislature, the House or the Senate. Came out of the Senate, went to the House. It goes to the House. We go up and we testify as to, listen, this bill will not protect people from illegal gun uses for violent crimes. It just won't. Most all these violent crimes they're talking about are being used by stolen weapons in the first place. So we have those discussions. And then they brought up school violence. Well, here's the thing. That bill will not stop school violence. I don't care what they say. In my 28 years, someone that is going to go find a firearm and do something like that cannot be stopped by a law that says you can't have a firearm, right? And I think we just had an issue in Boulder that dealt with that. So I brought up the fact that there was a incident because they said outside the United States this doesn't happen. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I found an article on a country where they drove a car through a crowd of children.
Yep.
Horrible thing. I mean, this is just nasty, evil violence, and these people are nasty, evil. The problem is that when I brought that up, they didn't want to hear that. They made a joke out of it. And then there was different legislatures, and these are very far left folks. This isn't even Democrats. This is I don't even know how they get called Democrats anymore. They're so far left. They were saying, well, Sheriff, it's unfortunate that you believe that you're the defender of the Constitution for the citizens. And what's even more unfair is that the citizens of Colorado actually believe you are the defender of the Constitution for them. That was his direct statement. We threw it online. I took all kinds of heat from them for it. But I wanted people to understand what kind of ridiculousness you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. I made a comment. Look, every sheriff is here saying, and law enforcement agency across the state of Colorado is saying, this is not a good idea. This will not do what you want. And you have how many legislatures that tell you, oh, that was the greatest thing ever, we're going to do it. How does that work when you're bringing in the people that know best on crime, guns, and the issues, and you're telling them that they don't have a voice in it? They made up rumors that they were doing stakeholder meetings. They never did stakeholder meetings. And if they did it behind our back and nobody even knew. And they didn't, even when I asked them, well, who did you talk to? They couldn't tell us. So obviously stakeholder meetings wasn't going on. Mm-hmm. And then the other side, we knew that it was coming directly from the governor's office. He was pushing that bill. And then later on, he comes out and says, well, I need to see these things in the bill before I'll sign it. I'm going to be a supporter of law enforcement. You didn't have an attorney general stepping forward to say, well, this is a Second Amendment issue. You can't do this. You didn't have a governor to even look at it. Our county sent him letters. We did everything we possibly could with multiple other counties around the state. And it didn't matter. They signed a bill. So the issue in that is that you're not going to get a voice in anything with that Second Amendment piece. They said, well, it doesn't affect some firearms. Well, yes, it does. Mm-hmm. The gas operation of a firearm racking itself to put another round in the chamber is all that you needed, and with a magazine in the weapon to identify 90% of firearms that were sold. You had all the gun industry there talking about the fact that it's going to hurt their businesses, and they still allowed it. And look how many I've already gone under. I don't know how many mom and pops throughout the state have gone under. Mm-hmm. When that bill goes into effect in August, it does a couple other things, though. Now, it takes CPW, now becomes the enforcement model for this thing. When were they ever supposed to be in charge of firearms in the state of Colorado? They took them and made them CPW and took away Division of Wildlife, and I think it was in kind of a push to do this at some point. So now CPW deals with all parks, and then now it deals with all the issues for concealed carry holders. Mm-hmm. Look how long it takes somebody to get through Division of CPW's program for a hunter safety card now.
Oh yeah.
So now the states
there's a waiting list, and if you look at and I know we just got done setting one up at the Outdoorsman Days event, but if you look at that waiting list is months and months and months to be able to go through the conclusion classes or the actual in-person classroom classes. well beyond the capabilities of CPW to do things on a timely manner at this point in time. What the hell is going to happen when you add 80,000 firearms guys in on top of it trying to get a permit or trying to get approval?
Well, it's not even 80,000. So think of it this way. The state said, well, we'll only see 50,000. That's what we figure. Well, here's the thing. The year prior, Colorado, I think, sold 485,000 weapons in the state. That's a lot of weapons.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, out of that, I bet you about 90% were the weapons that they were getting rid of. So now, in my county alone, I'll have 20 to 30,000 people that want to go in and buy a firearm. That's just in my county alone. And I have a smaller county. What happens when you have the El Paso County, the Douglas County, the Weld County? I say them because those sheriffs I deal with all the time on these issues.
Right.
You got probably a couple 100,000 people right there. And then at the same time, the state's still not identified to us how we're supposed to do these training classes.
And how you're supposed to do it in a timely manner to where it's not a restriction or impeding somebody's ability to be able to purchase or own a firearm.
That's exactly it. And it's going to, but I think that's why they did it, right? It was to make it harder and harder to get a firearm in this state. And I think the reason they put it back on sheriffs is they basically said, well, you as sheriffs want to fight this? Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to make you do it. Because they were originally going to make CPW do it. And then CPW said, we can't do this. We don't have the personnel. But then they turned around and said, well, sheriffs, you can charge a fee. Oh, wait a sec. A fee in Colorado is actually a tax. It's not a fee. And if I got to give money back to the state of Colorado or it goes to a local government, it's no different than a tax.
No.
So all of a sudden, you want me to break law and you want me to break federal law by holding this huge amount of information on all these people. They're trying to buy a firearm and then give it over to you, the state. So they put us in a really big pickle. But they know that because that was the issue the legislators talked about. Not only that, now we as a county have to commit to all that money up front. And there's no way, even if we charge the fees, if we have 20,000 people come and get it, that we would ever make our money back, the money we've got to spend to get ready to deal with this bill. Because we're talking probably $500,000 just for my agency to get the software packages, the training. I don't want to Band-Aid it by just having other people do it because we don't have the manpower. I'm going to have to hire new people to do that. Well, a compensation packet in Colorado is about $100,000 per employee. Mm-hmm. So if I'm spending, I hire 2 more people. There's $200,000 right there. Plus the software packages. I got another $50,000 probably in a software package to deal with this. Then I got to get it to you, the state of Colorado, as a connector. So there's another $40,000 to connect to you. And the state doesn't even know how they're going to connect all that data. So I don't even know how they're going to do that.
And so if you've got 64 counties and each county sheriff has to go through this same hoop and hurdle, you're talking multiple millions of dollars to implement this thing so our state division of Fish and Wildlife, Game and Parks and Wildlife, for them to be able to facilitate this.
Yep.
And if you look at what their capabilities are at this point in time, and there was a presentation on Cameo Shooting Complex at the last Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting, if you listen to what they're having to deal with, it's a significant burden, hurdle, and a restriction on a facility that was set up for the utilization of firearms and training and extracurricular activities and so forth. Do you think that this is an attempt to just stop outright the ownership of firearms?
Oh, absolutely. And it's something I'm going to push back on hard. But here's the problem you have. These legislators and this governor have figured out a way with the attorney general to take little bites out of your rights. And every year you're seeing it. I think next year they come out with an armorer bill where you can only have a certain amount of numbers of ammo and a certain number of guns in your home. And now they're telling you the types of guns you can own, what you can't own. It's the most restrictive in any other state out there. So what comes next? Because they're not done, right? Mm-hmm. So each year you're going to see a little more. Same thing on the sportsman side of things. Each year you're going to see an attempt. And even if you stop it with having a governor that's a Democrat in office that is going to be told what to do by his very liberal side party out of Denver, and a Democratic legislature, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic attorney general, you will lose in Colorado unless you have somebody strong enough to actually stand up and say, that's not going to happen. And I think that's the hard part. We only have a chance in Colorado. because everybody has been chasing the federal candidates, right? We're going to fund the federal candidates. We're going to do all these things. But the problem is we've been losing Colorado at chunks at a time.
Yes, for quite some time at a variety of different levels. And for somebody that lives in downtown Denver that isn't affected by the agriculture side of things or the water side of things or natural resources or sportsmen and, hunting and fishing type things or the firearms, you can take 100% of the population and probably find one of those things that I just mentioned that would apply to about 70% of the population. And about 30% of the population, it's not going to affect one way, shape, or form. Yep. It might hit them on the periphery, but they're not going to know about it because they don't engage in it, unless they're actively involved or engaged in whatever those pursuits are: oil and gas, logging, mining, the natural resource side of things. Do you see an ability for them to implement laws on an armor type of deal to where they could limit what you actually have?
Well, like a lot of these laws, it's like the one where you lock up something in your car, you have to have a lockable case inside your vehicle. Come on, who's going to look at that? The only time you're going to look at it is if you call and say, hey, my weapon was stolen out of my car, and the cop asks you, hey, did you have it in your lockbox? And you go, oh, no. That's the only time you get to deal with it. So doesn't even apply to people. The problem is a lot of these laws are being put into place. There's no enforcement mechanism unless you are a victim of something, and then all of a sudden you get charged too.
Or if there's a registration type deal or a limitation or restriction on your ability to be able to purchase at the point of purchase, and they could say, no, you've bought more firearms than you're allotted.
Yes.
They'll play hell figuring out what you had before, and they're not going to go door to door and start confiscating, well, at least not very effectively in my opinion. But do you see the pendulum swinging back at any point in time to where people go, enough is enough, and we need to get different people in there to make these decisions? Or legislators just say, okay, well, I think if I want to stay where I'm at and do what I'm doing, I better not go that far to the left or that far to the right, no matter if they're Democrat or Republican?
I think it's starting. I think that's actually starting now to change. I think I met with more people last year from different areas that were tired of things. And here's one of them. I did a Zoom with a bunch of sportsmen out of that Grand Junction, Montrose area. And here's what they told me, and this was very interesting to me. They thought when Polis ran that he was more libertarian. He would be better for the state than what they saw as a Republican candidate or the other Democratic candidates. The other thing they said was a lot of these folks are unaffiliated. They're not, on Republican. They're not Democrat. They're unaffiliated or they're independent.
About 50% of the state is unaffiliated.
Yeah, about 51%. I mean, that's most of the state. And it was interesting listening to him because we were talking about the issue of, sportsmen and how that's going to continue. And he was an outfitter. And the discussion was, listen, it's the problem in the past is that you've always had politicians step up and say, hey, I love the sportsman. Right, I'm a sportsman. They take a picture of a bow hunting outfit and they show you, oh, look, this is who I am. Or the guy that's catching a fish, kind of like Bennett. I think he's fished one time in his life. It doesn't matter to me, but that's not really a sportsman, right? The other side of it too is they do the same thing to law enforcement. They'll jump in a picture with us and go, look, I support law enforcement. But really, what has been supported? So tell me what any legislature that's out there right now is really supported with and won with. Because a lot of times they'll push a bill knowing they're not going to win, so they just get everybody's hopes up.
Right.
Or you get a guy that shows up and say, "Look, I wrote a resolution, and it's going to fix all your issues." We know that resolution is not going to go through. It
doesn't carry any weight.
Doesn't carry any weight. Knows it's not going to happen, but it's a political gesture, right? And this is what I'm seeing from dealing with that in independents and unaffiliateds. Fortunately for me, the internet is one of those things you can look up anybody and see all the different things that they've done. So for me, if you look me up, you'll actually see those issues that you're looking at. The Second Amendment, fighting safe injection sites in Denver, all those types of things. And what really is coming out of it is even people downtown Denver are sick of politicians that tell them they're going to do one thing and then do another. They're tired of politicians walking into rural Colorado and saying, I'm rural Colorado, or I'm a hunter and I'm a fisherman. So all those things have been happening for so long. I think voters are starting to figure out, well, wait a second. Why are we throwing our money away in these things? Why are we doing those? And that's why you're starting to see, I think, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party not being funded like they used to be. Because people are tired of putting their money there.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50 plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com. Do you think that people understand politics enough in today's environment because of the social media? I mean, it's a flip of the key. All you got to do is just punch something and something comes up, just like what Tyler's doing back there.
Yeah.
Do you think they pay close enough attention to the day-to-day operations of things, or do you think that they become oblivious to it because it's so much and it just doesn't appeal to 90% of the general public?
I think it is so much right now. But I will say this. I think there's a change in how people get their information now. And it's something I've been watching for a while because I have a marketing side too. Here's what I've seen. The commercials on TV, people don't really care about anymore. They're just another political ad. The news media at night. So different generations view different media pieces from others. A lot of your new voters are much younger now. And they're actually starting to pay way more attention to what's being done because it's now affecting them. A, pocketbook. B, their future. C, the things that they want to do, like the Sportsmen of Colorado. Second Amendment folks. A lot of those that didn't vote before. And we saw it in how many people voted in the last elections. 380-some thousand sportsmen didn't vote. You had 380-some thousand Second Amendment folks that didn't vote. You had 1.1 million Christians that didn't vote. All those voting blocks receive their information differently. So now I think podcasts are helping immensely because they're getting more information about certain subjects they want to hear about. And then they get a spattering like this one of kind of everything.
Yeah.
But how many of those sportsmen would go and look at different political podcasts, right? But now they're figuring out, I got to get political. I was in Chaffee County, and I was talking to younger guys there, and one runs a company outside of Denver, and the other one's running a backhoe business in Chaffee County. And he told me, he's about 35. And he goes, I didn't even pay attention to this stuff before. But now it's making it harder and harder for me to get a building permit. So it's affecting his job. Mm-hmm. And then the other guy was telling me, he goes, listen, we're doing underground lines, and we're putting in these cables. And he goes, it's harder and harder for me to get the stuff that we need to be able to complete the job because I can't truck it in to Colorado. They won't truck it because of the cost. So now all of a sudden those things are hitting home to a younger population that hasn't been voting. So I think podcasts, social media pushes, those are helping immensely for people to understand what's really happening.
What does Jason Mikesell say to somebody that is a Republican and says, we can't win in the state of Colorado because X? Because it's changed. I mean, it's, last Republican governor we had was Governor Owens.
Yep.
There's been 3 different ones since then. What would you tell a guy that says we don't have a chance in hell?
Well, this one's probably get me in trouble, but here's what I can tell you. I've been telling them because I get that question a lot. I get a lot of people go, you know what? We haven't been winning anything. We aren't going to win anything. It's a big blue machine up there. It's grinding you down, and there's no way you can get up there to do this. And I go, but here's the issue. What you're saying is exactly the problem on why people don't vote, right? Right after the first Donald Trump election where he lost, you had tons of Republicans and other people saying, why vote? I'm not going to, they're just going to take and steal the election anyways. And if you watch during that election cycle, look at the low voter turnout that happened in Colorado. And then all of a sudden you had more Democrats in every single position that were unchallenged across Colorado. Now you have people coming back because now he won because it was too big to rig. That was the call for action. But I would look at it and say, it doesn't matter if you think they're going to steal election or not. It doesn't. I'm not going to say I'm either way on that. I'm a law guy, right? So I would tell you to vote. If you want your Colorado back and you want to do those things, you got to get out and just vote. How do you know if you're – a lot of the people that were telling me that, we lost the election because people were hiding the vote didn't even vote. And that's the problem. You can't expect to lose and then not do the things to try to win.
Well, I think one of the prime examples from a sportsman side of things, and you and I talked about this before, that everybody said – when we started the campaign on Initiative 91 that became 127, oh, good luck. You're screwed. You're going to lose. There's no way, shape, or form you're going to win. There's no way, shape, or form. And then when Ordinance 308 and 309 came up in the city and county of Denver, and they found out we were fighting on those, and they said, oh, well, you're going to lose those too. I'm sorry, but you might as well just pack your bags and get the hell out of the state. When we won all three of those with the campaigns that cross-pollinated and intersected, and we led the charge on one, and we were participatory on the other, and we were bystanders on the ag side of things for 309. If you look at the margin of victory in the city and county of Denver on 308 and 309, and look what we did on the Front Range on 127 and how we swapped, even on the few counties that we lost, the very, very few counties that we lost, we still changed 15 or 20 or 25 points over Proposition 114 in 2020. And so when people tell me, oh, we don't have a chance in hell, and I'm like, well, why the hell do you think we fought the last thing?
You know what's funny is about those bills, and this was one of the reasons I knew I could win. When I watched those bills flip the way they did, from everybody saying, oh, they're going to lose, and here's what told me that there's a difference in Colorado to voters. Colorado voters are different, I think, than a lot of voters outside the state, right, that are party-driven. Colorado voters are initiative-driven. They're looking at exactly what is happening with that issue. You have smart voters. I don't think we're blue in any shape or fashion. I don't think Colorado's ever been, a red state to begin with. It's always been that purplish voting based on the issues, not necessarily the party.
Right.
And to me, I look at that and I go, if you're the best candidate and you're bringing the best solutions to the table, Colorado voters are going to vote for you. Because I think what I have seen is Colorado voters are tired of party-driven politics to begin with. I think that is changing the Democratic Party in Colorado. I think it's changing the Republican Party in Colorado. And that's why we have so many independents and unaffiliated. They left the parties because they wanted a fresh new look at things and could vote any direction. And I think that's what I'm seeing now is that it's initiative-driven. It's what the issue is, and they're making the best vote they can on the information given to them. That's why it's important to educate the public as to what really is happening.
Well, and there's as much as I've played at the Capitol the last 12, 13 years, and with us having lobbyists within CRWM, and it's not what I signed up for. It's not what I wanted to do. I think a lot of people feel disenfranchised that they are unaffiliated, and that what you have to pick from essentially is Republicans and Democrats. There might be somebody that is an unaffiliated representative or a senator, but in all reality, they're Republicans and Democrats to be able to get elected. And I saw that from people that are saying, I'm running unaffiliated. There's very few of them that ever get elected.
Yep.
I think that disenfranchisement causes voters in different sectors, specifically people that are more independently engaging, like the ag community, the oil and gas community, the sportsman community, people that have not typically showed up, the Second Amendment community, maybe because they feel disenfranchised and there's not a suitable candidate, so they just throw their hands up and say, screw it, I'm not going to do it. Well, last year, and I keep reiterating the fact to these individuals, last year we won because we convinced people that your vote matters.
Yep.
If you looked at, and we use it as an example from Proposition 114, when you have 1.8% difference on something that was so contentious, and then 4 years later we had three contentious things from our side of the aisle, from our side of the consumptive use more than anything.
Yep.
And convince them that all we have to do is change about 0.7%. You don't have to turn around and change 100%, 0.7%, and you would have flipped the vote on 114. Well, then remarkably, people then turned around and came out of the woodwork, and we won on 10 points on 127 and 17 points on 309 and almost 39 points on 308. or 309, you look at the margin of victory that was created. You can create some optimism and enthusiasm for people, and I don't give a rat's ass one way or the other, Jason. What side they vote? Just get out and vote.
Just vote.
Just turn around and because if you're bitching and complaining about what is happening, and you didn't vote, I don't want to hear about your bitch and complaint. And because I've become such a political figure to some degree because of what we did and what we've done. When people come up to me and want to gripe about the current administration or current landscape or the current set of circumstances, and we'd have to, if you didn't vote, I don't give a rat's ass what you think anymore unless you're going to belly up and you're going to turn around and volunteer time and effort and money right now where we have to be in preparation for the Second Amendment stuff, the sportsman stuff, the conservation, the natural resources, the agricultural stuff, the stuff that's important to me. Mm-hmm. What I want to say, though, is you have a particularly tough road to toe in some regard because the things that are of interest to me aren't necessarily of interest to every person on the Front Range and vice versa, or on the Western Slope. You could dissect this state probably into 64 different districts on top of the counties that we have. The average person could give a rat's ass less about what I care about when it comes to conservation and hunting and fishing and natural resources. However, the vote last year on 308, 309, and 127 proved that they care enough to check the right box when they think it's going to go wrong.
Yep.
And those were people on the Front Range within 25 miles east or west of the I-25 corridor that said, I don't hunt, but I think that we should have hunting. I don't know squat about mountain lions, but I think that those people over there probably know with Parks and Wildlife. I don't think that we should ban cowboy hats and fishing lures and Native American artifacts, but who am I to say that when I don't have any of that underneath my rooftop and I'm not really concerned. They voted. Why the hell don't our people, I say the people on the consumptive use side, stand up and vote without that defeatist attitude and just sit on the sidelines and then gripe about it the day after election?
I think it's human, right? Just being a human, sometimes we'd much rather complain about things.
It's easier.
It's easier, right? But I will say this, and here's the thing about the Front Range in Colorado. Those issues may not be in their backyard yet, right? Because a lot of them want to get out and fish and they hunt and they go out and recreate in those areas. Well, what happens when you're restricting? You can't even go in those areas anymore, right? So there's a big issue there. But there's other big pieces in Colorado for me to be able to deal with the Front Range and understand what's happening is crime. Crime in Colorado is now second highest in the United States, and it's growing. It's the way we handle things. It's the way we're not holding people accountable, which is now
affecting. That's all sectors of crime.
It's all sectors of crime. It's across the board. So those are big issues. Bigger issues, too, is businesses. Look, you walk down 16th Street in Denver. Look how many businesses are closed up. They can't open. I listened last year to some folks that were trying to get tips to where tips were going to be part of the employees' benefit package, right? Mm-hmm. Because in Denver, they pay employees $20 an hour by city municipal code for restaurants. Right. And the restaurant owners were there going, well, hey, if they make $20 an hour, can we offset $7 an hour of it based on their tips? So if they make over $100 a day in tips, can we take $7 off an hour? And we'll pay them at $20 an hour if they fall below that, but we can't continue to afford to do this. And I heard the legislature go, well, no, because then you're going to take that away. And he's like, no, you don't understand. They're still going to get $20 an hour, and then whatever else is over that in tips, they still get too. And the woman kept going, well, no, we want them to get that and the $100 an hour. And the poor restaurant guy's going, they're making more than we are as owners per hour for a whole establishment. And he made a comment to him I thought was very insightful. He goes, but listen, there's going to be less jobs for people because we're going to have to close our doors. There's going to be less restaurants. So it's either you lower this a little, let us make it, or there's just going to be less restaurants. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, those legislators didn't care. That's the issue on the business side in Colorado. It's just like oil and gas. We need more oil and gas. We have to have oil and gas. Colorado's on a 5-year plan to not have the electricity we need to turn on lights. People don't realize that. The federal government told us we're going to have an unstable grid. We're creating, we want to create more jobs in the tech industry in Colorado, We want to make data centers and we want to do all these things. But data centers create power. You've got to have a power output that can be utilized for that. And it's got to be clean power. It can't be going on and off. Then you're losing components. And it's an even bigger cost for them to be able to bring that stuff into the tech industry. So the problem is that you've got a business issue and a crime issue, and that's going to be big for the whole Front Range, right? Because the Front Range is really a tech industry. Mm-hmm. It's a tech hub. So what happens if we don't have the right power? We're going to need nuclear energy, and they're just now exploring those talks. Don't need to explore. We need to get it here, and we need to get it here as soon as possible. 6 to 10 years on creating a nuclear energy site, where the other types of powers is even longer. But we need not only one, we need multiple sources of energy throughout this state because we're growing at incredible rates. So the business side of things, the Denver legislature believes that they know best on businesses. I watched so many businesses go up there and try to discuss things with the legislature, and they didn't get anywhere. And the problem is business will grow in Colorado if you let it organically grow. I've opened up more businesses, and here's the thing about every single one of them, and probably for all business owners in the state of Colorado. When is the state of Colorado came in and gave you the magic bullet to making your bullet work or your business work? Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen. They do that. All those grants and things do help, but those need to be pushed down to local county governments to give out, not the state of Colorado, not to control your businesses. And I think that's a big issue for the whole Front Range, to open up businesses, to create jobs, and to create high-paying jobs and a better economy in Colorado, because you get more taxes if you have better companies and businesses staying in Colorado and they're growing. That's how you fix our state debt. It's not by a lot of other issues. Now you got to deregulate things, because those are things that are being done by administrative focus. They're trying to do that outside of, because they really want to get rid of Tabor. Tabor is keeping a limit on how much the state can tax, which is, thank goodness for Tabor. So they're using fees, and they're using the regulations, and they're creating regulations to create more fees. And that's being pushed down to every county and all your building. So you want to lower building costs, you lower the fees, and you lower the restrictive nature of what's happening in the state level.
And I don't care what side of the equation you're on. If you're on business or non-business, if you want to do permits, the amount of fees that have been imposed over the course of the last 8 years, just for me, from a small business side of things, I'm like, oh, for crying out loud. I mean, how much more stuff? I mean, how do you go in a 4-year period and you still have the same vehicle, or you still have the same building, and you get additional fees that go on top of the stuff that you've already owned during that entire process when that thing now has taken effect?
Yep, it's horrible. And then the other side of it too is, I've talked to big business owners that have had an issue with crime within their areas. So they're putting in more power to their buildings to create more infrastructure for the business, to create more money and more business. And you got thieves ripping up those cables at night because they're cutting them up for scrap. The one gentleman I've talked to about this, he had it happen to him 3 different times. It's $150,000 a pop. How do you deal with that? And you speak to your local law enforcement, like, there's really nothing we can do. But even being a sheriff in Colorado right now, I can tell you, there's a lot of times I have to look at victims and go, there's nothing we can do with this. They have deregulated this. It's decriminalized it. We in this state have decriminalized crime to such an extent that you are the criminal by even calling the issue in. That's a problem. And if that person is of a different color than you, or a different race, or a different makeup, you're in trouble for calling them in. And that's got to stop. The DEI things over race and incrimination and all these different things. Colorado does a really good job of instructing law enforcement officers. Now, I think it's going overboard with the Attorney General. He's pushing all kinds of stuff that law enforcement doesn't need.
Which, for those that don't pay attention, he's also running for governor.
He is. He's running for governor. Yeah, I think that's a bigger issue for Colorado than you could ever even imagine. But here's the problem with this. If I'm decriminalizing crime to a degree that victims have no rights anymore, and you got people that are being released on admin releases from prison that should have been in prison, they've had multiple convictions since they went on parole and probation, yet they keep them in the county system so they don't have to put them into or incarcerate them back into prison, which means they can show what's called recidivism being lower in Colorado than anywhere else. It's because they're not doing their jobs. It's not because we don't have a problem. You can't have the second highest criminal violent crimes in the United States and tell people we don't have a crime issue. It's just crazy to me. So, and I hate to say the word crazy because it just has gotten to that point. But the problem we're seeing in Colorado is that by the misuse of Department of Corrections, by releasing people through parole and our probation departments, being told they need to release people, not violate them on these issues for drug abuse, child abuse, sexual assault abuse, rapes, attempted homicides, all those folks are getting released right back out in the communities. That's ridiculous. And here's the thing, they'll tell you, well, show us the numbers. Well, you're not tracking the numbers. So how do you show somebody a numbers when you're not tracking it as a state? I can tell you from the amount of people that we put in jail, and I bet you every other sheriff in the state has a horror story on this kind of thing. It's a constant. I had a guy try to kill one of my deputies a few years ago that had just been released from prison on parole. Why is he on parole? So there's a lot of those issues that are going on, and you see it almost every day in every county. You can pull up the news articles on these things. But the interesting thing is I'll walk into a room and I'll go, how many people have been a victim of a crime? And I bet you 80% of the room will raise their hand. Now, that's credit card crimes. That's somebody calling your mom or dad that's elderly saying, hey, give us money because you have a warrant for your arrest. So they give them the money because they don't know. And the next thing you know.
That's everything.
It's a fraud, right? It's everything. Colorado has an expectation of being victimized. And I think people are tired of it. And I think it's just going to get worse, too, before it gets better. And then we're not even into the immigration issues that we talk about.
No, and you guys, and your hands are tied, law enforcement as a whole, your hands are tied to a significant degree.
They are. Yeah, very much so nowadays.
Is that a chance of getting better from the federal side, even though the state is creating different restrictions to that, or?
Well, the immigration fight's really kind of interesting. I find it interesting because I've been sued so many times, I can't even tell you now. So I got sued by the ACLU for housing ICE detainees, right? We have a contract that houses people, and we also worked with them. If I have somebody that commits a violent crime in my community or a crime, I would notify ICE if they're from another country, and then ICE would come in and do their thing. So then they sued me for that. So when I got sued for that, we went ahead and formed a 287G program. It's an ICE program where you have somebody that's trained by the federal government, and they actually then do the stuff, and that my other deputies don't do it. Because that at the time was legal also. So we go to court, I win, which is the first time I think in Colorado history any sheriff had ever won one of these battles against the ACLU. And I won for the reason that I said, listen, to protect the peace and my citizens, this is a program we use to do so. Because these people shouldn't be here in the first place committing crimes. They should be awarded the federal government, not the state of Colorado. So basically, we won. They appealed the case. They won the appeal saying it needs to go back to a court. So it goes back to a court. We win again. And this goes over the last 8 years. So then the Denver legislature, because we win, they immediately turn around and file a legislation to attempt to stop us. And they initially called it the Teller Law. This is Teller County. I'm the only one that's doing it. So it's not like it's anybody else that they could be mad at. So we go and we fight that bill. And then it came down to the governor saying, hey, listen, Teller County, we'll get you, because we lost about $1 million in revenues from housing ICE detainees, which then offsets our taxpayers' money for having to keep a jail, because jails are expensive. And all we're doing is detaining somebody just like we would for any other federal organization out there, and they specifically identify only ICE. And I'm only identifying the worst of the worst that are coming through under arrest for something that are now convicted in the state of Colorado, and I'm giving them over to ICE because I don't think we should have to pay for them as inmates. That should be the federal government's issue. So then we're able to find my attorneys say not to use loopholes anymore, so now it's a path to getting it straight. So we're using a new path. And in that new path, we find, well, it's a 287G deputy. They're a federal agent. You can't interfere with federal law. So then it goes back to court over the federal law issue. And what the state courts say as well, they're still a Colorado law enforcement officer, even though they're a federal agent at the time. So now, kind of speeding forward, they create another law that now stops us from having these things. And I think Governor Polis just got sued on his own law for this, for giving information out. But that information that law enforcement organizations were attempting to give ICE were all about bad criminals. So I actually did a a debate at Denver University for the Sun, which is, they've always been fair with me. But we sat down with the two folks that wrote the new immigration bill that they just passed, that Governor Polis signed, that he got sued on his own bill, which I find kind of funny. But in so doing, they brought up all the issues with the bill. And so I'm debating with them and talking about those things. And they're very nice young ladies. I thought they were very intelligent, very smart young ladies. And I remember going, well, you do understand, though, these are laws that you're creating in the state of Colorado. So what they said was, well, we're going to stop the federal agents from being able to arrest people in Colorado for these. And do you realize it has no effect on them at all? They're federal agents. Your laws, they have no bearing on what they do because those are actually federal laws. And one of the guys in the audience, he goes, well, if you're not following Colorado state law, we could take away your funding mechanisms. And I go, but isn't that what the federal government's telling you? Because this person works for the state.
Exactly.
And I just thought it was very interesting when he said that. And I go, but on the other side of that, though, say that happens. What if we, the counties, just decide we're not going to pay you anymore because we're the ones who give you your funding for all your taxes? Well, you can't do. Well, no, we can't do that. So why do you think you as a state don't have to abide by federal regulations? The other side, you're at Denver University. You're not too far from Boulder. You got a lot of people there from Boulder. What happens when you have a major forest fire? Because now the federal government's saying they're going to withhold funding from the state of Colorado. We have a major fire because Colorado doesn't own all of its air assets. Those are resources brought in from the federal fire teams, right? Federal government. So what happens if they said, "Hey, we're not going to give you the federal assets. How are we going to fight a fire? We're using smoke jumpers. We're using federal assets. We're using Type 1 teams. They're funding all of this through the state of Colorado. So they pay Colorado to pay us for the fires as local entities, counties, fire departments. What happens when we don't get any assistance from them because we're not following federal law?" That was a discussion with them. And at that point, nobody wanted to talk about it anymore. And I'm not that person, so I just keep talking about the issue of, hey, listen, the other side of it, though, is I think the federal government's always going to send what they need to protect citizens. They're not going to stop that. That'd be a political quagmire nightmare for anybody.
Right.
But what happens when they just go, we're not footing the dime, though? You, Colorado, are going to foot the dime. How are you going to pay for my $4 and $5 million fire? And look, you got a big fire going on Montrose. How much is being used down there to fight that fire?
A lot of damn money right now.
Up to $120,000 per drop sometimes. So all that's happening, and now you're saying you're going to withhold money from counties. Federal government says they're going to withhold money from you. We have now backslid into what the Civil War was over. This was the state not following federal law, and a federal government saying you will or will enforce it. How did we get to this level except for just really crappy leadership at any level within the state of Colorado? Somebody should have looked at that and went, wait a second. All the feds want to do is deal with criminals. If that would have stopped there, and I had this discussion with 100 pastors of Denver, Hispanic pastors of Denver. Here's the issue. I know when I go into a cartel marijuana operation and I find a 68-year-old woman there, she's not the cartel boss, right? She's not the one we're looking for. The problem is the cartels, when they come across the border, they're grabbing this lady up and they're putting her here to run this because they know that we don't want to go after this lady. But she'll tell you, yeah, but if I don't do this, then they're going to take advantage of my daughter who they have in Mexico. Or they're going to take this out of my family that's here in Colorado. So what's happening is they're basically putting an umbrella over all cartel actions because that cartel is using these people. And now we as a state are going, we're going to defend all these actions for all these criminals.
And they're using them for a shield?
They're using them for a shield. So what we don't understand in Colorado as a state government is that when you're telling the federal government, you can't come in and take these people that you're after because they're after criminals. But what happens is when they're in local communities, because we force them in local communities because we can't work with them in jails or in prisons, now those ICE representatives are having to go into local communities to try to find these people. Well, they find them with a nice family. Well, guess what happens to a nice family that's from Mexico or they're from South America? Now they're what's called an encounter. Now they have to do something with them, whereas normally they wouldn't even mess with it because guess what? They've not committed a crime. There's not an issue. The bigger issue is they're not kicking in the door at the federal prison or at the state prison because it's full of illegal immigration issues that are criminals. They have been convicted of crimes. But when Division or Department of Corrections releases them, Why would you release them knowing that the federal government wants them? So now they go into their local community, and now they have to be forced to go after them and find them at their last known address. So what's happening is from a state level, they are creating the issue that now is hitting national TV saying we're going after all these innocent people over here. When really the state of Colorado could have stopped that and under good leadership said, yeah, we'll deal with the people that are in our prisons, in our jails. You can have them because that's who they really want. But instead, we're making national media by saying, oh, no, look, they're coming to our communities. We're having to fight them to keep our people here. That should never have gone that far. Those people that are here illegally, but they're here to make money for their families or do whatever, that would have been left alone are being used as victims on both sides now.
That affects everybody.
It affects all of us.
Yeah, every single person in the state of Colorado.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, there's some things that won't affect everybody just because of demographics.
Yeah.
But that sort of stuff affects everybody.
And that's the ticket, right? That's the things that if you aren't in the mix of understanding law enforcement, you're not in the mix of business and having both those backgrounds, you're not going to know. So then you're being forced by a party to do one thing without understanding all the intricacies that are involved in it. And that takes leadership and understanding of those things. And how to fix that, I know exactly how to fix those issues.
So without getting too deep into the weeds about what your particular dislikes are about the way things are going, is there one thing or three things that Colorado has going for it right now?
I think we have great citizens. I truly think Colorado has such a diverse population of citizens that understand so many different things. Because our military bases are here. We have a lot of military bases. We just have a lot of smart people. It's always been this melting pot of engineers and just smart people coming to Colorado. It always has been, ever since I was a kid. You never know who you're going to meet walking down the street, right? I think that creates a great place and space here in Colorado for a lot of different people. I think our industry, because we are the center of the United States for a lot of things, we have the capacity to grow industry very rapidly throughout the state if it's allowed. I think that's a huge plus. I think we have one of the more beautiful states with some of the most raw and beautiful country that you'd have anywhere. And I think that's a huge draw to Colorado.
What are the three worst things that we have?
I think right now it's the political divide throughout Colorado. I think those are really drawing a lot of issues here. I think we're being used as kind of a test bed and a control to show, hey, we can control the West through these issues and agendas. I think the lack of media coverage on all things independently. I think there's too much state money going to local media outlets that now fund these types of programs. I think that's one that I think I'm starting to see all across the nation, though. That's not just a Colorado thing. It's a national divide with public monies being pushed into private media organizations. I think it's got to stop. And I think really on how we're utilizing our wildlife in Colorado as a moneymaker. I think it's one of the things I really don't like. That truly was to be developed for everyone in Colorado. And I don't mind out-of-state hunters coming in, and I really think that outfitters in Colorado, if you're going to get an out-of-state tag, you should have to go through an outfitting organization to get that out-of-state tag so we can make sure it's done the right way. Because we got great outfitters in the state, and it would bring back the outfitter businesses because they're really getting crushed right now.
A lot of that, and sorry to interrupt, but a lot of that, specifically on the outfitter, is dependent on the federal nexus because of Bureau of Land Management, because of Forest Service, and I think that, and I don't have statistics to back this up, but in the last 8 years, the federal engagement pertaining to recreational or consumptive use, and I say consumptive use in the sense to where if you're on the landscape, you're consuming something.
Yep.
You don't have to have a license to purchase to be able to get a bighorn sheep or a fish or whatever. If you're cross-country skiing, if you're mountain biking, if you're camping, you are taking from the resource in some capacity because in today's environment, it takes something to be able to manage that so you can be able to turn around and engage in it. And so the outfitter deal, I think, would resonate with a significant amount of people, including the sportsman community as a whole. It would still generate money to the agency to manage wildlife, to the Pittman Robertson Dingell Johnson side of things when it comes to the excise taxes, and to all of the other components that go into the $7.25 billion trickle-down economic effect of what hunting and fishing provide to the state of Colorado, which, in turn, the agriculture industry is a significant beneficiary to that, just because there's a lot of landowners that either allow outfitters on their property. There's a lot of landowners that actually hunt with out-of-state hunters on their property, which they're allowed to do without being an outfitter themselves. And there's this economic benefit that comes back into just the expenditures that go into the local economies, whether it's from Craig, Colorado to, Platoro, Colorado.
Well, and I think, Dan, to me, and I see Colorado in 10 years, we have to be producers of what we have in the state. And what I mean by that is this. We're shipping in a lot of lumber from out of state. I think we have 22.8 million acres of lumber, but we don't have enough lumber yards. Mm-hmm. We need to put grants into creating our own lumber base, which then would decrease the cost of home value or cost for homes. The other side of it, too, is we have so many local farmers throughout the state, and they're getting their butts kicked, too. And here's the thing about local farmers. If we enforce a tax credit to any organization, company that buys locally homegrown items from here in Colorado, that would increase people wanting to buy Colorado-grown everything. The other side of that then, too, for any of the monies that are made by those farmers in Colorado that sell to local industry, they get a tax credit also for even producing it. I think that would be huge for local growers, ranchers, farmers all across the state of Colorado. And I think that's something that really is needed. We need to start producing our own products. Colorado, even power, we're sending it outside the state. Mm-hmm. The coal plants over by Craig in that area.
And down in Pueblo.
All that power is being shipped out of state. It's not even being used here.
Yeah.
So, get back to actually producing something that we can export out of the state or we can produce in the state for our own economic benefits. That puts people to work, too. And I think that would be a much better direction to go than where we're at right now.
I'm going to switch gears and ask you some questions specifically pertaining to the majority of our audience, but you could go off the rails and go down a rabbit hole however the hell you want.
I probably will, too.
Yeah. So were you cognizant of the discussion on the federal side about public lands distribution and the sale of public lands?
I was, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Why would we sell public lands to anybody? I mean, it really, Teddy Roosevelt came in and he started to create all kinds of federal parks and things because we wanted to preserve that. I think the way we preserve property throughout the United States is really what made America America. Look, go to Europe. Try to get somewhere outside of a city or outside of somebody's ownership. Colorado has this availability to people to walk out in the woods and not come back for a month if they don't want to come back and not see anybody. There's no other place like that in the United States except for maybe Alaska or British Columbia. We have to keep that. I don't care what it costs. I mean, that is something we should be protecting. And that's really what CPW was produced for, was to protect those things.
Exactly.
And to want to sell that's selling out Colorado.
You kind of answered the question about the non-resident license allocation and the outfitters and such, but as a growing population, and they say that by 2050 that we're going to be 8.5 million people in the state of Colorado. A lot of that's still going to be concentrated on the Front Range. It's just going to get worse and worse. Yeah. I envision before I'm dead, which is probably not going to be too awful damn long, but before I'm dead, that the growth that has happened from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins is going to be similar from Colorado Springs down to Trinidad. And maybe not the giant cities like what we see where it's just one giant urban sprawl, but it's not going to be the vast openness that you see now. You've got Fort Carson on one side of the highway between Colorado Springs and Pueblo. There's a limited amount of growth that could happen, but we only have a certain amount of areas that we can continue to grow unless there's land sales of private property, which then expand into a variety of other sectors of the population. Where do we get our water 20 years from now? If we grow to 8.5 million people, where the hell do we get our water?
Well, that's the thing. They don't make a lot of it, right?
No.
We don't produce it. So here's the problem in Colorado, and we are going to have to get to a point where we strategically sit down, look at our water resources, and know how many people we can actually bear at a certain point. You're not going to stop growth, but growth has to be strategically planned. And I think that way you start looking at, do we need to put in more reservoirs? Do we need to hold more water? But right now, you've got different states that have a stranglehold on Colorado, right? And they drained us dry, a year and a half ago? Our Colorado River is almost to nothing. There's certain times when other states can't water their golf course if we're hurting. And that's where Colorado we have to find a way to hold our strategic water to where we're able to support Colorado. And not just Colorado citizens, but we got wildlife. Well, I think our national grasslands, I think protecting them, that really, because you have animals that go a long distance to find water during our dry spells. And that's where that rancher that's actually putting in water for his cattle and things, those same animals are drinking out of it. So you take away water augmentation rights in those areas, we're losing our wildlife too. So I think that's the problem in Colorado. We strategically have to figure out a way to protect our water better so that we have the resources needed for our state as well.
What about, and all good points, Tyler, punch up the what is the current administration calling the mass transit, the fast transit from Trinidad to Fort Collins, and do you see any viability for something like that in today's environment or in the future that would be of more benefit than it would be a detriment?
So here's the thing. I've been a world traveler too, and I've gone all over the world. I will tell you that train systems do work in certain areas. I don't know, because of that front range piece, that you really should put money into a private state partnership to do that right now. We don't have the funds. Do I think in the future it's viable and it's probably something that should be done? Yeah, I think so. Because you look at the European bullet trains, you're doing 150 miles an hour to different cities, and it does reduce the clog on the major arteries for more flow of traffic. And you're getting more and more kids now here because you have a college down there, you've got certain things happening, you got military bases en routes. I think that it wouldn't be such a bad thing to increase the ability for trains to work down there, but that should be on the train organizations to do. That's how they built the country.
Well, there would be, we talked about that eminent domain deal earlier when you and I spoke. That there would be a component of that would have to be incorporated into it, because not every single person is going to want to sell in that whole easement to make sure that they were part of this supposed solution.
And see, I'm not a big fan of eminent domain. I don't think taking away somebody's rights for their property should ever occur anymore. That's something that happened a long time ago for certain reasons, and I see it all too often used poorly nowadays. So if they can put a train through without having to do that, or they can do something to where it's the train companies using the cost for that, I don't have a problem with that, because I think into the future, looking 20, 30 years down the road, it might be worth it. Is it worth it for Colorado right now? I don't think so. I don't think it is.
Well, look at our highway system right now.
That's the problem. We don't upkeep our highways. We're not upkeeping what we have. It's kind of the way my wife tells me, we can't have nice things if you don't keep up on the things you have. So, but
is that a hint? Don't go buy any more stuff.
Yeah, don't go buy any more stuff. Yep, you already got one of those.
Yeah.
But I think that's the key. The state of Colorado had pushed towards electric vehicles for everyone. Do I think it's a wave of the future 20, 30 years from now? Absolutely. But is it what attorneys always tell me is ripe yet? It's not ripe yet. We just don't have the technology. We don't have the capability.
You might have the capability to build a car. You don't have the capability for 5.9 million people to turn around and power the car.
Well, and we don't have a place for the batteries to go when they're bad, right? So we're having to we have no carbon footprint for those types of things. So it's just not ready yet. Do I think if people want to buy them, that's great, but don't force me to buy them. I think people need to be allowed to buy what they want.
If Jason Mikesell was to become governor, or as any politician says, when I become governor,
yeah.
When you become governor, how would you work with the current makeup of the General Assembly, with the legislature, if it was not to change in any way, shape, or form?
Well, here's a good thing. Being a sheriff, I work with everybody across the board. Being a business guy and a CEO of a company, you have to work with people or you won't get a job done. So I have the ability to work with. But here's the other thing, though, too. I think we work for the Colorado citizens, and I think that has now been forgotten at a legislative at this time and period for legislation. The problem is we got to get that back. I think to form a solution to educate citizens as to what their politicians are doing is a big thing. So I think for me as a governor, being able to walk down and go into a Senate hearing or go into a legislative hearing and actually sit down just like any other citizen and testify on something would be a big deal. Especially if it's, I testified on this one. I bring it up because I was the only one that went and testified on it, but it was safe injection sites. They wanted to allow taxpayer dollars to create safe injection sites. Safe injection sites they could put near schools, churches, didn't matter. They were going to put them in so that way, if you're under the influence of something or you needed to use your crack or you wanted to use these things, you could go to this facility and medically they'd make sure that you came out of whatever overdose you were in when it happened. Well, that's all well and good, but aren't we just allowing laws to be broken and things to happen? If someone had videotaped that and brought it forth at a state level and go, we're not going to use our taxpayer dollars for this type of thing, the citizens would have looked at it differently than what I think they heard it was going to do. Be a treatment center for people. It's not a treatment center. It's increasing their habit tenfold. And it gives an area for drug dealers to push this legally in areas that are near schools or churches or anywhere. And then city governments could pay people to do that were part of the lobbyists that were pushing to create it. I think those things aren't talked about in Colorado because we allow 700 and some bills to be dropped. So we have to reduce the amount of bills. We have to get it to where people can actually be educated before it happens. Because you'll get times when you get 72-hour notice that something's going to hit the floor.
I know.
And plus that, you don't even get to see what's on it until they publish it, and that may be a day. Mm-hmm. And then if there's changes, you won't even know while you're testifying what the changes were too. So how do you argue something that you don't even know what the changes have been?
And sometimes people get up and speaking from our position, they get up and complain about something that's already been fixed, but they weren't made aware of it. So then they're almost redundant or just misinformed or appear to be uneducated. And when they find out that that was fixed, they don't realize that something else was changed. So then they're not griping about the change because what they were really concerned about was already fixed. The amendments and the adaptations on legislation is mind-boggling because the average guy, I'm not talking about an attorney, and I'm not talking, well, even for the most part, legislators can't read the damn thing because they have to have it interpreted. But the average guy or gal has a hard time interpreting what it actually says. And even at the final bill, when it's voted on and then actually takes effect, try to read the legal jargon, and it's difficult to see, am I in violation? Can you actually do that? Should I get a legal opinion? There's some questions about how the government side of things works with what you just said. The majority of the people, the people themselves don't understand because it's not their wheelhouse.
It is. And here's the thing. If they're going to change something on a bill and they're supposed to be doing stakeholders, they should publish the stakeholders.
Yes.
Who was a stakeholder in this? Mm-hmm. So we can go, well, how is that guy a stakeholder? He didn't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. I watched, I don't know how many times they would say, well, we had a stakeholder meeting. Well, who was in that meeting? Well, it's a political appointee that is pushing for the bill to be pushed, even though he's supposed to be on our side. Or it's like the Second Amendment bills. Who got the stakeholder on this thing? Every adverse firearms person in the U.S., that was your stakeholders? Well, what about the other side? Why don't we have this discussion with that? Then the other side is if you're appointed to a legislative position, you should not be able to go onto a committee. Because here's what's been happening in these committee movements throughout the state of Colorado. When you go up to a legislator and they have a committee, a lot of the Democratic side is putting a committee member on there that was just appointed. Well, they're doing that for a reason. Because that committee person pushes bills through or denies bills. So they have more control over that person because they just appointed him through the democratic process from their own organization. What should happen is that if someone is going to be appointed in this state, it should be both either side having somebody they put up for that position, not just covered by the representative of that political party.
Yeah, and see if you can find the how many Colorado legislators are appointed versus elected, and I think it's somewhere around.
It's a lot.
It's 25 or 28 or something. It's one of the largest divisions in the United States. Maybe that'll pop up. 100, 65, 35. How many are appointed? 21 members are.
Sorry,
Yeah, 21. So there you go. 21 members were initially appointed through a vacancy committee. So 12 representatives and 9 senators. Okay, that's 21%. It was give or take that a little bit. But still, 21 out of 100 were not elected.
Yep.
They were put in there by vacancy committees, or because somebody resigned, or somebody got sick, or somebody moved, or somebody quit, or somebody had nefarious complaints or some sort of action against them. 21% of our entire General Assembly is not elected.
Yep.
Well, what the hell's the good of a General Assembly if it's not elected?
Yeah, that's the problem. And here's the other side of that. Why put them on a committee when you know that others are going to control them? Because they've not been elected in. So they're not a voice of the people yet.
Well, that goes into the same thing that look at governor appointments. and my specific interest is the Oil and Gas Commission, the Colorado Department of Ag, and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and the State Land Board now that you saw who is appointed or hired as the State Land Board Executive Director, Nicole Rosemarino, who has particular ties with one commissioner of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and they both serve on the Southern Plains Land Trust that always gets money from GOCO. It's this tidal wave of webbing that goes into place. But appointments are something that a governor has at his disposal, and I'm not sure the exact number, but it's several thousand individuals that are appointed by a governor. Just like in a presidential administration, it's probably 10,000. Maybe it's 20,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guarantee that the governor is not appointing all of them, and the president is not appointing all of them. Those come through recommendations of trusted allies and associates to make those recommendations and association appointments. On the case of what I'm interested in, what we're talking about is Colorado Parks and Wildlife. You've seen some of the inner workings of the way that's happened because, for one, you're a sports person, and for two, you've seen some of the workings on what's happened over the course of the last 4 or 5 years on the wolf introduction.
Right.
Do you see something that could be altered that would be more equitable and more non-divisive in the way that appointments could be made?
Yeah. So, and here's a big thing with that. And this is what kills me, right? So why wouldn't your county commissioners from local counties that are involved with certain areas that have the animals and that are part of the hunting, why wouldn't they sponsor who they think should be put on that commission that would give them a voice? And then that person could be dealt with or given to the governor as, hey, this is a person we think would be done. Well, why not increase the commission to some degree to where it has more people on it that come from most counties throughout Colorado, which gives you a much fairer shake on dealing with these things rather than 9 people that really, some of them don't even know which side of the barrel a round will be fired out of, or understanding what that looks like with the animals across the state of Colorado. Because how many thousands of animals do we deal with on a daily basis through division of CPW?
We've got 961 species of wildlife, 78 which are game species, and now that we have the invertebrate side of things, there's 7,000 invertebrates that have been put under the purview of Parks and Wildlife. You've got multiple endangered or threatened species on the federal and state side of things. There's non-game species that I mentioned, but when you look at the decision-making process of 11 appointed commissioners with the ex officio individuals, right now in the state of Colorado, there's 2 sportsman reps, Mr. Gabe Otero and Mr. Murphy Robinson. That's what we have as far as representation when it comes to strictly the wildlife side of the agency. A lot of individuals, and I'll say this on my mic because it's my mic, but it's actually Bobby Marshall's mic, but I'm using it. Mr. Gabe Otero is a nice enough guy. Do I consider him to be a legitimate, qualified representative for sportsmen and women in the state of Colorado? No. Mr. Murphy Robinson? Yes. But that's 2 out of 11 when the bulk of the money that is generated for the $7.25 billion trickle-down effect with a $400 million agency is from sportsmen and women. Now, there are other funds that come in there, but it's not tax-based. But if you look at the objective agenda of what has been placed over the last 8 years, and if you have 2 out of 11 that are representative of the bulk of the income of the agency, there's something wrong with the political selection process, and I know that sportsmen and women would like to see something different. Now, I know the animal rights activists and I know the strong left-wing environmentalists would like to see something different than what they have, even though they've got the deck stacked in their favor. Do you think that if you were to be governor, that there could be an opportunity, because they work at the pleasure of the governor, that there would be an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with those individuals soon after you got elected, and then give them an idea of what your agenda and what your expectations were moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you see any sort of an avenue, and maybe you haven't investigated this wholly or thoroughly, do you see any avenue to where some of those individuals could find another opportunity to reapply and not just kick everybody off because of the process? But how do you address something when somebody's been appointed for a 4-year term and is up for a total of 2 terms, to make the decisions that are right as opposed to the decisions that are agenda driven?
Well, I think it's function too. So, and I've always believed this. I think CPW needs to be separate from Division of Wildlife.
From Parks and Wildlife.
From Parks and Wildlife.
Parks.
I think, I want to see them going back to Division of Wildlife, right? Those animals and those invertebrates and on all the other creatures in Colorado, they need that protection, right? So I have, in my office, I have CPW agents. Now, I will tell you, the CPW agents I deal with the Division of Wildlife calls like we had back in the day. Mm-hmm. The CPW side for the state parks, they're all over at the state parks. Mm-hmm. So there is already a separation and a division within one organization, mm-hmm. because it was never designed to be one organization. So it's got to be separated. Now, I think CPW probably needs its own board to identify how to deal with the environmental factors of the water and all that kind of fun stuff. But then you do need another board that deals directly with the wildlife and how that operation is run. Those need to be gone through some type of either lottery system or some type of an election system to get on those boards. That goes with the governor with that. Because here's the thing, shouldn't sportsmen have more of a voice in who gets put on those boards? And maybe that needs to be done through some type of a system where they're voting on that if you've had a license.
See, and one thing, and just to where you know, and this isn't just my idea, but you mentioned something about counties and commissioners being able to make recommendations or nominations. And there's been a lot of talk from our community and the ag community that, okay, you've got multiple ag reps and you've got outfitter reps, which are supposed to be equitable nomination processes and representation for that, which hasn't happened. But the idea would be if you had a pool of 12 different major sporting organizations that could then put up nominations of individuals, maybe it's 5 or maybe it's 50, but then the governor would be able to pick from that 5 or 50, whatever was put forward. Same on the ag side, same on the recreation side, whether it's the state park side or whatever. Then the governor would still have the pleasure to be able to turn around and appoint people from the at-large position. Those would be things that I think both sides would be agreeable to, because they would actually have people in their circle nominating people from that industry or the representatives from that industry or that side of the equation. Then the governor still gets the final decision. But right now, there's no way, shape, or form that anybody, unless they're in the governor's back pocket or vice versa, has an opportunity to turn around and be nominated and be seriously considered.
Well, and that's the problem with the lack of stakeholdering throughout the state on everything.
Yes.
Right? I don't know, and I'll be honest, I don't think a governor should have all the ability to choose those people. It should come from different places, right? Because here's a problem that you run into when you have one person with all the power and all the dice on everything. That person, depending on who it is, will change things drastically.
Which is happening.
Right? I don't know that if I was a governor that I wouldn't give away a lot of those authorities to maybe the governor only has a right to 3 positions. And the rest of the positions have to come through the stakeholdering on those sportsmen's organizations that have been vetted and have been here for a long period of time and have really done the protection of the animals throughout Colorado, and then county commissioners. I think there needs to be certain folks that get to make those decisions from throughout Colorado, which would then change drastically on boards and organizations being able to just, Here it is. We'll just wipe it clean because I want my agenda driven. The problem in Colorado is we're allowing one person or two people to run a whole agenda across Colorado and change Colorado on its face. A governor shouldn't have that kind of authority. And maybe I'm cutting my own throat someday. But the bigger issue is that you never look at today, you look at tomorrow. So if I'm a governor, I need to change processes to where now it's more equitable, it's more fair to everyone in Colorado, not just one side, whichever side you flip, right? Because I'll be honest, I don't care if somebody's a Democrat, Republican, independent, unaffiliated. If I'm in office, I want the best person to do the job. And that person is the one I want to be used for those things. That comes from being a CEO. That comes from running and managing a sheriff's office as a large government organization. You have to have the right people in place to make the right decisions so that when I go to bed at night, they're making the right decisions because you can't always make those decisions. The problem that I'm seeing in the state of Colorado right now is that you have a governor that makes decisions and then pushes it through his organizations. Now, I've had several occasions when I've worked with Governor Polis on certain things, and I'll be honest, when I've had fires or I had my mine rescue, he was great. I think he's a person that really cares about people and really wants to do the right thing on those things. But I think as a governor, you have to get out of the way of policies and allow the state to repair itself and put a function in place to where it's not all about one side. And that has to be done because we don't need this urban-rural divide to continue. That is killing the state.
And the thing, too, is you might be eventually running against policies that have been enacted that could be continued. But in all reality, you're not running against the current governor. You're going to be running against somebody else on the other side.
Yep.
And maybe they have a difference of opinion of the current policies as well. You know, I mean, especially depending on what side of the aisle that they sit when it comes to oil and gas or when it comes to wildlife or when it comes to natural resources or whatever.
You're absolutely right. And here's the problem in Colorado, and I'll just be honest. It's one of the reasons I ran. You have two Democrats. One of those are going to be the winner of this. It's either going to be Weiser or it's either going to be Bennett. Neither of them had the money Polis has, right? Polis could make decisions based on what he thought of something because he had the money to do so. Your Bennett and your Weiser are both career politicians, right? Weiser came here from another state. He worked for a judge at one point. He comes here. He's immediately voted in as an attorney general because they put a lot of money into his campaign. Bennett was a school teacher or inside schools prior to. He gets appointed to his position. He then sits in Congress. And I'll be honest, from as a sheriff's standpoint, he didn't do squat for us when we went and asked. Didn't care about Colorado whatsoever. I'll probably get hit on that later on. But here's the thing about it. Those two don't have the financial and private funding to make decisions on their own. They are going to do exactly what Polis has done this last term, which is listen to the very liberal side of his party. And here's the thing. Democrats aren't happy with how that party's going either. There is a very small group of very liberals that control the money and the party at the state level outside of Denver or out in Denver. They're controlling the media piece. They're controlling those types of things. So what happens when you want your Colorado to stay the same or change in certain areas? If that party doesn't want it to happen, those two will do exactly what they've already done and what the party's doing now, and I think you'll see it tenfold. The problem in Colorado is who gets to beat them. I think it's somebody so totally out of the box that understands both sides, business and law, that is the only person that's going to be able to walk in and win a general election, and that's me, and be able to stand firm on my values and what I think needs to be done because I've already done it. And people can actually see what I've done to fight those issues. So you don't want to gamble on somebody that hasn't done it or doesn't understand the state, doesn't understand those organizations, doesn't understand how to win. The only thing that I do is win, and I'll do that too with this. But that's the only way to take back the state.
If you had the opportunity to get into office, I think it's January 12th, January 13th, 2027. What's the first 5 things that you want to turn around and do that you think need to be immediately changed?
So here's the thing I learned a long time ago about when you take over something. You need to look at what things are being done, right? And then you're going to have to sit down with a bunch of attorneys and figure out what you can do and how fast you can do it. If a candidate says, hey, on day one, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to change the budget. Well, the budget's already written. You're not going to change the budget. It's already been voted on. You're not going to make those changes. But what you can do is immediately get ready for when you can start to change things, right? So that's budgetary, and that's looking at, what am I going to fund, what am I not going to fund? One of those issues is how we do CPW and changing the Division of Wildlife. That is a big thing for me on what to do. The second piece is look at how we're dealing with the roads. One of the bigger things, too, is look at our education system. Find out where we're just in a CEO's world or someone else, you look at how you're hemorrhaging money. I call it, you got to stop the bleeding. We have a $1.9 billion debt. Somebody has to stop that type of bleed immediately. And we've also got to start looking on how we're going to deregulate a lot of the codes that have been put in place that are really stifling Colorado right now. We're also going to start looking at exactly how do we start giving grants, but not through the state government. We're going to start looking at how we're going to give grants through local county governments to really increase businesses and the capability to do so. The second, the bigger thing too, is start looking at how we're going to do the tax credits and the tax agendas that need to be pushed forward. Something that I can work with both sides of the aisle to complete right away, because you need wins. You can't make a political stance on something that you know you're going to lose and you're then going to lose for the next 4 years. You have to be able to identify those small objects to win first and then start moving into bigger issues. But I think in Colorado right now, we've got to deal with the budget. The budget's one of the bigger issues. We have to get parents' rights back to them. We have to stop some of those crazy things that are happening. And we have to work on our Second Amendment piece. Because right now, we're expending a ton of money to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. I don't know if you even know this, but they recently bought what's called a Bearcat. It's an armored vehicle. Why does a support function of the state of Colorado need to go out and buy a Bearcat system, which they're about $240,000? These are expensive, up-armored systems. And they're sending agents to SWAT schools when you have local agencies that are already dealing with those things within local jurisdictions. The state of Colorado was never supposed to have their own SWAT teams. They're not supposed to have their own policing forces, right? Now, I'll probably be hit by other law enforcement organizations for this, but I will tell you this. I don't think we should be expending that kind of money on something where I can't even get DNA checks and rape kits back or other things to work on crimes with victims from the state CBI group for up to 18 months sometimes. So why are we putting money into these things? To immediately change how we allow people to be put on probation and parole in this state. I think you can curb crime by about, 30 to 40% within the first 30 days by just enacting that. If you enact those things and you're keeping people incarcerated for crimes that they have been committing, and stop with the parole issues immediately to try to curb the financial impact on that, you'll actually decrease your financial impact by putting them in prison, because your local counties are having to fund twice as much to keep those people in their systems. So that's one of the bigger things I would do immediately. So that's a lot.
That's a lot
within a short amount of time. But those
You're not
are the
sleeping
things.
on that first day, are you?
Oh no, I don't think you ever sleep. I don't even sleep now. So,
excuse me. Are you enjoying yourself?
You know what? I've been all over Colorado. I've been to some places I haven't been as a kid. I enjoy meeting people and talking, like people like yourself and others that, really, I like to be the dumb guy in the room. There's a lot smarter people than me, and actually seeing and meeting a lot of these folks, I'm just so impressed with Colorado values. I met with the ranchers in Fruita, Colorado the other day and talked about wolf deprivation and whatnot. I was so impressed with that group of people because they're standing for what they believe. I've been to the Capitol, met with all the Second Amendment folks in Colorado Springs and different organizations, and I'm just so impressed with these folks. They're smarter than the state gives them credit for. These are smart people. And I will tell you, I'm just so happy to see Colorado now looking ahead, seeing what's happened as citizens, and knowing they got to make a change. Now, I do wish I got more sleep out of it. I wish there was more time in a day, but I'm enjoying it. It's been interesting.
So if somebody wants to invite you to a function or get your perspective to a group of individuals, I'm not going to, you can offer this, but I'm not going to offer out to you. You can call Jason if you want and talk to him individually. You're probably not going to turn around and be able to talk to 5.9 million people.
No, that's
But,
rough.
Yeah, but if somebody wanted to do that, how do they do that? And then how far in advance should they plan to try to do that?
Yeah, so the best thing you can do is reach out to our website, which is mikesell4gov.com. And you can ask for a meeting, or you can sign up to help us. But really, the best way to do it is send me an email so that we can schedule it out. Give us some dates in the future when we can do those things. I've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings. I find them to be very easy because I can jump from one to the next with different groups. And more than happy to do that. We have gone to a chicken coop in Colorado to have a discussion. We have been to...
Was that a chicken farmer or what?
Yeah, he had a bunch of chickens, and they do a local meeting there, and they were just wonderful people. They were here by Denver, out by Golden. And so we've done some crazy stuff, and it really has gone well, but that's the best way. Hit us up on that website, and more than happy to talk to you. I will tell you, to help us donate, I think here's the thing I found in Colorado. It does cost something to get your freedoms back.
We proved that last year.
Yeah.
Just to save what we had.
Yeah.
I mean, it took $2.8 million to save the ability for Colorado Parks and Wildlife to manage mountain lions and bobcats. And that didn't come easy, but go ahead. I mean, it's an expensive venture.
It's so expensive. And the thing is, I'm horrible at asking for money, but I'm having to ask now because it really is something that if you want your Colorado back, you're going to have to pay for it. And helping me, I think, will get us there. I truly do. And you can find and donate right to my website, and then signing up to be a volunteer. I think we've got about 400 to 600 volunteers already signed up. We're a lot of people throughout Colorado. Mm-hmm. So things are going very well for us in that respect. And then share. So share this podcast. Share it everywhere. Share the stuff that we're putting out, because we're putting out little commercials and things almost daily. A lot of podcasts, a lot of content. And don't be afraid to ask me questions. We've been pretty open and just have talked about so many issues from throughout the state. So more than happy to have those discussions and talk about pretty much anything. You want to talk about nuclear energy or technology-based stuff? I actually have a background in technologies, so I understand some of those things. So more than happy to talk to folks.
So give us a rundown between now and primaries next June, right?
Yeah, primaries March. I don't know that they've given a date yet.
Yeah.
They may have yet. I just haven't looked. I think right now in the state of Colorado, the primary is harder than the general election to some degree. And a lot of that is because there's so many people running. A caucus, there's just so many votes you can get in a caucus. There's only a certain amount of time to get things done by. And really, you're dealing with a lot of folks that are probably good candidates, right? And they're doing things for the right reason. Trying to find the right candidate. And I will tell you this, everywhere I've gone, the old way of looking at things was, well, we don't do anything until after a primary. If you have a certain agenda, you've already lost. You cannot wait till the primaries to endorse, to donate, to... If that's the case, you've already lost, because the Democratic Party have already funded all the way through. As soon as somebody has said, hey, I'm running, they're immediately funding them. That doesn't happen like that for Republicans. It doesn't happen like that for independents. So if you want a different agenda, a different idea, you have to start now, because this is where we have been losing our shorts in Colorado for how many years. And the reason I ran was because I kept seeing us lose, and I hate losing. I'm just not a good loser. I never have been, right? So you want to win, get involved now, and don't hesitate, because if you hesitate, we're going to see Colorado, you're going to lose your hunt and fishing rights, you're going to lose all firearms rights, you're going to lose your kids in school, there's just so many issues, and it's not scare tactics. It's just the way things are going. And if you don't believe me, look online and look at what they've already passed. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, a lot of them are saying they're going to go for more stuff this next year.
Yeah.
Just lightning strikes more than once in the state legislature. Man, they will constantly go after something.
And people need to understand too. And I didn't want this to be like a campaign speech for you. What I wanted to do was be able to turn around and give you the opportunity to cover a wide variety of topics. Because we're more sportsman, conservation, hunting, and fishing centric. However, we've had a bunch of guests on this podcast that aren't necessarily into that side, but they're a component. They're on the periphery of it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that people understood that there's a certain amount of individuals out there that are capable of maybe at least hanging their hat on the hook, whether they're successful or not. because our issues on the conservation side, the hunting and angling side, the wolf issue has not been talked about unless we bring it to the conversation. And I would open up this offer to any one of the gubernatorial candidates, whether it's on the Democrat or Republican unaffiliated side. If they want to get on the Through the Gates podcast and have a conversation, great, because I would like to know a little bit about their background when it comes to the things that are interested to our listeners. But to me personally, and for what we do for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, conservation is a subject matter that can be bastardized very easily by unknowing, uneducated people. It also can be pedestalized by people that know what the hell they're talking about, or at least are willing to be educated about it and then elevate it to a point to where, oh, this is something that I, as a voter, should be able to pay attention to and be concerned with. I'm going to make the offer to Greg Lopez to see if he wants to come in. I'll talk to Senator Baisley or Representative Bottoms or even on Congressman Bennett and A.G. Weiser. I don't have a problem with opening it up to anybody because I want them to talk about the stuff that we proved last year on 3 different ballot initiatives were of concern to the general public in the state of Colorado. Is that going to make it enough to where somebody's going to want to come on and all of a sudden think that they're going to win the election? I don't think so. But if we don't start talking about the things that are being undermined and eroded and degraded behind the scenes that the average person doesn't know or doesn't care about, I find that it's likely that stuff will continue to be bastardized and degraded and eroded. And then when I'm dead and gone, it's too far gone to be able to turn around and correct. Conservation does not happen by accident. Wildlife management does not happen by accident. Wildlife does not happen by accident. I'm hoping that these conversations that you and I are having and the other individuals are willing to elevate that to a point of concern because everybody benefits off of wildlife, whether they pursue it, whether they buy a license or whether they don't. And wildlife is centric to our well-being. It's centric to our outdoor recreational experience, whether you hunt or whether you don't. And I appreciate the opportunity for you to come up here and get on this and have these conversations because I think it's important. And I think that if we don't, then we've missed the opportunity to take advantage of things that are of concern when it comes to the ballot more than anything. But if people are concerned when it comes to the ballot, if they knew just a little bit about it before it went to the ballot, maybe it would never make it to the ballot.
No, I totally agree. And the thing is they're all candidates. And I think it's good for people to hear exactly what they have to say about something. Because really, the citizens are the ones that hold us accountable, right? And the thing is they need to hear what those people are going to do, what they're going to say. And hopefully they're honest about all the things that they're going to do. And my hope is that the right candidate wins. And I don't care who it is. If it's me, I think it will be me. But on the other side of it, too, is if it's not me, I hope it's the right candidate and that they can support Colorado. And I think that's important.
So you got any final statements, closing remarks you'd like to say?
No, Dan, just thank you for having me on. And again, it's mikesell4gov.com. You can follow us on our social media. But just know that, I want my Colorado back. And that's been kind of our push. But that also means I want all of us to have our Colorado back, whatever that looks like. And my hope is that we can get somewhere this year.
Jason, thanks a bunch. Well, we had an interesting episode of politics on Through the Gates to Save the Hunt. And we're going to continue to try to elevate this conversation in some regard because we believe that the 2026 election is probably going to be one of the most important ones when it comes to conservation, hunting and fishing, Second Amendment rights, all the stuff that we're so concerned with. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, people start to educate themselves, get engaged, get involved, find out the right candidate that they need to turn around and look into. Doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican. Just make sure, as Jason and I said at the first part of this podcast, get your ass out and vote. Make sure you get your ass out and vote. So, till next time, thanks for watching Through the Gates.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.